After the event of the Onbusuman with Rin, the second Kintama is revealed to be in the hands of a young man named Unji Zuma. Unji seeks its power to conquer a cursed diorama called Danmanra. When Momo is accidentally transported inside the diorama, she must work with Unji to defeat the game's challenges and reclaim the Kintama, all while trying to return to the real world. At the Ayase house, Momo, Okarun, Seiko, Turbo Granny, and Rin and the Hayase performers enjoyed dinner after exercising the Onbusuman. During the meal, it's revealed that my spirit has transformed into a guardian spirit and bonds with Rin, driven by a desire to see her become an idol before moving on to the afterlife. However, Rin reveals she wants to write vampire romance novels instead. Despite Rin's change of heart, Ma insists she pursue a singing career due to her talent. Momo suggests Okarun and Rin leave so she can rest, but Okarun reveals his second Kintama is missing and that it was handed over to a police box by Rin. Okarun continues saying that somebody has collected it, but Momo says how could they prove it was theirs, which Okarun agrees that he finds that odd himself. Okarun believes it could still possibly be at the police box and that the police officer may have lied about it. He asks Momo to help sense its aura to confirm whether it's there or not. She agrees to check after school tomorrow. Before leaving, Rin apologizes to Momo for misjudging her as a delinquent, admitting she now sees her as a good person. Embarrassed, Momo brushes it off, while Okarun says goodbye without looking away, something Momo quietly notices. The following day, Momo and Okarun visit the police box. Frustrated by Okarun's inability to make eye contact, Momo tries sensing the Kintama's aura but finds nothing. Okarun remarks that someone must have really come to collect it, and now they're left wondering how to track down that person. Momo explains that when lost property is collected, the police require the person to write down a lot of details. Okarun suggests they might have taken the mysterious person's name and address. Momo wonders how they can get access to that information. Later, at the Ayase residence, Momo and Okarun decide to enlist Turbo Granny to pose as lost property and access the police box records to help trace the missing item. After some bribing with potato chips and a stuffed bull plushie, Turbo Granny reluctantly agrees to help. At the police box, Momo and Okarun attempt to present Turbo Granny as a lost item. However, their plan runs into trouble when the front desk officer grows suspicious. As they nervously spin a story about finding Turbo Granny at a video game arcade, the police officer points that he regularly patrols the arcades and has never seen a mannequin Nico cat in the claw machines. Annoyed by the officer's examination, Turbo Granny struggles to stay calm, prompting Momo to use her psychic powers to create a distraction. They manage to fill out the required document and leave in a hurry. Meanwhile, Turbo Granny, sealed in a plastic container, angrily breaks free, muttering that no bag of chips is worth this hassle. Using a closed umbrella, she swings once from a shelf and rolls down to navigate the area, eventually reaching a set of computers requiring a username and password. Later, she informs Momo and Okarun that she couldn't retrieve the information they need because it's locked behind the computer system, which she can't operate. Okarun points out that if Turbo Granny has left the station, it means a lost item is now missing from the police box and they need to leave something behind in her place. The group heads to a convenience store in search of a replacement mannequin Nico to swap for Turbo Granny at the police box. At the store, Momo and Okarun unexpectedly run into Rakuro, who is now working as an employee. He casually mentions his part-time job, but Momo remains wary of his intentions, recalling his previous allegiance to the Serpo. Rakuro explains that he has been deemed a defective product and banished for thinking differently from his people, crediting Momo as the reason for his change. Though Okarun shares Momo's distrust, she decides to ask for Rakuro's assistance with a plan that involves his nanoskin. After arranging for a part-timer to cover his shift, Rakuro agrees to help Momo and Okarun, but insists Momo take responsibility if he loses his job, to which she reluctantly agrees. Using his nanoskin, Rakuro disguises himself as a police officer to infiltrate the police box. Once inside, he smoothly swaps Turbo Granny with another cat item to avoid suspicion. When he encounters the computers requiring a username and password, Rakuro bypasses the security by inserting his finger into the USB drive, successfully accessing the data on Okarun's missing Kintama. Outside, Okarun wonders where Turbo Granny went, and Momo casually mentions she headed home. Suddenly, Okarun notices the real officer returning on his patrol bike and heading their way. To create a distraction, Momo and Okarun stage a fake argument. However, their plan takes an unexpected turn when they accidentally trip and fall on top of each other, leaving them both flustered and embarrassed. Meanwhile, Beiga confronts Rokuro at the entrance. Without hesitation, the Serpo sucker punches the officer, who retaliates with a punch of his own, warning Rokuro that picking a fight with a cop isn't a smart move. The two engage in a chaotic brawl, exchanging rapid punches as Momo comments that their fight resembles the famous Don Fry and Takayama showdown. Anyway, Rokuro introduces himself as an officer from Kamigo Station posing as Tanaka and fabricates a story about reviewing the lost property file during Beiga's absence. Momo and Okarun grow increasingly anxious at such a poorly constructed lie. Beiga, suspicious, calls Kamigo Station to verify Rokuro's story. Moments later, Beiga hangs up and surprisingly says the claim checked out, warning Rokuro to seek his next fight at the station's dojo instead. Once the coast is clear, Momo and Okarun ask Rokuro how he managed to pull it off. Rokuro reveals that he used his nanoskin to hijack Beiga's phone via a connection from the hat on the ground, making it appear as though the station confirmed his story. More importantly, Rokuro informs Momo and Okarun that the person with Okarun's Kintama is a student named Unji Zuma from Renjaku High School. After arriving at Renjaku High School, Momo and Okarun witness a turf war between two classes. They're soon confronted by a gang of students who take an interest in Momo. When one of them touches her hair, Okarun pushes him away, angering the student. Momo steps in to defuse the situation, asking for the whereabouts of Unji Zuma. The student refuses to cooperate unless he gets to fight Okarun, who agrees as long as Momo isn't harmed. Momo, asserting herself, points out that the student was in the wrong for touching her hair and demands answers. The confrontation is interrupted by a towering student demanding that the boy who touched Momo's hair apologize for his rudeness, emphasizing that such disrespect toward a girl is intolerable. He then informs them that Unji is in Class D and offers to accompany them, escalating the tension between the two classes. In Class D, Toriumi, the third in command, tells them that Unji has been absent for 2 weeks and says that he doesn't want to get involved with him. He explains that Unji has become increasingly dangerous, almost as if possessed, and confirms Unji is in possession of Okarun's Kintama. According to Toriumi, Unji had ominously declared, "Now that I've got this, I can wreck the world." To verify if Toriumi has come into contact with the Kintama, Momo asks Okarun to transform. When Okarun does, Toriumi becomes terrified, comparing Okarun's Turbo Granny form to Unji's transformation. Too frightened to continue, Toriumi runs off, leaving the other students confused. Momo and Okarun exchange baffled looks, trying to process what they just learned. Later, after failing to find Unji at home, Momo recalls Toriumi's warning about Unji and worries he might be like the evil eye. Suddenly, they hear screams and see a bizarre old man running toward them. Assuming he's a pervert, Momo uses her powers to hold him while asking Okarun to call the police. However, a gang chasing the old man soon appears. The old man cries out for help as Momo blocks an attack from a gang member, with Okarun in his Turbo Granny form stepping in to defend her. The gang recognizes the form as the one Zuma takes, prompting Momo to question their connection to Unji. They refuse to answer and demand the old man, but he adamantly refuses to go with them. Momo insists she won't hand him over without answers. The old man cries out that he's not going back. One of the gang members threatens her, but after an intense stare down, he relents, claiming he doesn't hit women. The gang agrees to take Momo and Okarun to Zuma, but only if the old man comes along. At their hideout, the gang reveals a diorama, explaining that Zuma has gone inside it, and for him to come out, someone else must take his place. The terrified old man begins crying, claiming he's already endured his share of that living hell. The gang member who led them to the diorama retorts that the old man was there first, and if he hadn't left, Zuma wouldn't have gone in. The gang then corners Momo, Okarun, and the old man, demanding that the old man return to the diorama to bring back Unji. Momo intervenes, diffusing the tension and urging the old man to explain his connection to the diorama. The old man reveals that the diorama was a birthday gift from his father, who had purchased it from an antique shop. In a brief flashback, his father explains that it was apparently quite old and unique. The old man describes how intricate and finely crafted it was, feeling as if something about it was calling to him. As a young boy, when he touched the castle within the diorama, he was instantly transported into its world, filled with dragons and fantastical creatures. In the present, Momo asks how old he is now, and he replies that he doesn't know, only that he had been inside the diorama for what felt like an eternity. He recounts how the world was full of monsters, forcing him to constantly be on the run. Though he had sweets to eat, the endless fear and isolation drove him to the brink of despair, and he contemplated taking his own life. However, one day, he encountered a girl from the gang. Overwhelmed with joy at seeing another human after so long, he grabbed her hands, and in that instant, he was transported back to the real world. The old man continues, explaining how he tried to go straight home, but he had no idea where he was or how to get back. While trying to figure things out, Zuma allowed him to stay at his house. Momo, confused, questions this, as she thought the old man and Zuma had traded places. The old man clarifies that he swapped places with the girl, who then adds that Zuma later got her out of the diorama, entering it in her place instead. The girl goes on to explain that the gang members have tragic pasts and owe their survival to Unji, who took care of them when no one else would. A gang member adds that Unji insisted on entering the diorama alone, claiming he would wreck the world from the inside. Realizing what Toriumi's earlier statement meant, Momo asks if Unji ever mentioned a gold ball. The gang confirms, explaining that someone gave it to Unji, claiming he could destroy the world inside the diorama if he had the gold ball. However, the gang now fears for his safety as he's been trapped inside the diorama for a week. The gang believes the only way to free Unji is to send the old man back inside, but he refuses in terror, holding his sword defensively. As Momo tries to de-escalate the situation, the old man accidentally strikes her. Stumbling backward, Momo unintentionally touches the diorama and is instantly pulled inside. Okarun watches in shock as she vanishes. After falling into the diorama, Momo lands on top of a macaron in a strange land made entirely of desserts. Imagine being immersed in a world of sweets. Anyway, a scroll materializes in front of her, welcoming her to the diorama known as Danmanra and presenting her with a card featuring an incomprehensible diagram. Unsure of its purpose, Momo picks herself up and decides to ask questions once she tracks down Zuma. She begins exploring the sugary terrain and, curious, picks up one of the sweets. She's surprised by how delicious it tastes. After crossing a bridge, she arrives at the entrance of a castle where she finds an array of weapons lined up. Recognizing the swords as identical to the one the old man wielded, she picks one up for herself. As Momo questions the old man's claims about monsters, since she hasn't encountered any so far, she notices that the ground beneath her is made of cream. Looking ahead, she spots a hill with the scroll floating above it, labeled National Border Hill. Meanwhile, at the gang's base, the members prepare to force the old man back into the diorama, but are interrupted by Okarun, who spots a figurine of Momo inside. A gang member reveals that a figurine of Unji was also in the diorama, but disappeared days ago, which they assumed signified he was in danger. Both Okarun and Momo realize simultaneously, though separated by dimensions, that the diorama is not just a strange world, it's a game. Okarun deduces that if it's indeed a game, then there is a way to finish it as we shift things over to Momo and see her struggling to climb the steep, tilted wall in front of her. Frustrated after repeatedly sliding back down the tilted wall, Momo suddenly finds herself under attack by a giant knight bursting through a nearby wall. The knight hurls chunks of debris at her, forcing her to dodge. She instinctively tries to summon her powers, but quickly realizes she can't access them within the game. Panic sets in as the knight raises its massive sword and swings toward her. Desperate, Momo cries out for Okarun to save her. Before the knight's attack lands, a mysterious figure swoops in to save Momo. Two umbrellas swirl around the figure like sentient weapons, and his form bears an uncanny resemblance to Okarun's turbo-grainy transformation. The knight swings its massive sword at the newcomer, but one of the umbrellas intercepts, locking the blade in a deadlock. With a simple click, a surge of energy activates within the umbrella, blasting the knight's sword apart, the force severing its arm in the process. The second umbrella darts through the air as the figure leaps from the debris onto the knight's head. With precise timing, he plunges the umbrella into the knight's crown, triggering a massive explosion that obliterates the knight entirely. Its fragmented body collapses to the ground in defeat. Turning to Momo, the mysterious player demands, "Who are you and why are you here?" Catching her breath, Momo answers she's looking for Unji Zuma. To her surprise, the player undoes their transformation and realizes that they are in fact Unji himself. After finally meeting him, Momo immediately asks Unji to return Okarun's Kintama. Unji, noticing Momo's knowledge of the Kintama, assumes she has power similar to his, but refuses to give it back, explaining that he needs it to finish the game. He adds that in this world, without the Kintama, they can't use any abilities. He also reveals that the Kintama is the source of his abilities, leaving Momo shocked. When Momo asks who told him about the Kintama, Unji recalls meeting someone at a library who knew a lot about magical objects. Strangely, trying to remember the person's face makes him feel dizzy. He explains that the person somehow knew about his powers and his goal, leading him to a police box to retrieve the Kintama without raising suspicion. The person told him that without the Kintama, he wouldn't be able to use his powers inside the diorama and asked Unji to wreck this world for him, since the mysterious man couldn't enter the diorama himself and needed Unji to take his place. Unji agreed, motivated by the chance to help his friends. However, the diorama was filled with monsters, and Momo is further shocked to learn that Unji has defeated every monster in the diorama. She informs him that the diorama is a game, and the ultimate goal is to clear every stage, meaning they don't have to defeat every enemy. Instead, they just need to reach the end point, starting with climbing the wall. When Unji asks for her name, Momo refuses to share it unless he returns the Kintama. As Momo struggles to climb the wall, Unji helps her by carrying her on his back. Reaching the top, the two find themselves facing an obstacle course made out of pastries and sweets. Concerned about Momo's skirt during the course, Zuma lends her his pants. However, this accidentally causes the Kintama to fall out of the pocket and all the way to the bottom of the obstacle course. Determined to retrieve it, Unji steps onto the obstacle course, commenting on how hard it is to maintain any balance, only for Momo to angrily point out that it's because he's wearing Geta sandals. Suddenly, Unji looks up to see a group of frogs in chef uniforms appear, heading straight for the Kintama. Realizing the urgency, Unji calls out to Momo for help as the frogs close in. Momo struggles to maneuver through the chaotic obstacle course, smacking herself on some of the platforms as she tries to make her way across. Meanwhile, Unji knocks off one of the chef frogs off from atop a platform. Momo manages to latch onto a moving platform that carries her from one place to another, but a nearby frog confronts her. Without hesitation, Momo kicks the frog, tossing it aside as it falls down in agony. On another platform, Unji faces off against one of the chef frogs using a spoon, while the frog fights back with a whisk, both battling it out like something straight out of American Gladiator. In a burst of energy and inspiration, Zuma yells, "Ora ora ora!" A classic JoJo reference fitting with Yokinobu Tatsu's well-known love for the series. Unji, still locked in battle, calls out to Momo, urging her to grab the Kintama while he keeps the frogs occupied. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes through the air, cryptically speaking of treats and chocolate. Before Momo and Unji can fully process the words, a towering giant chef materializes out of nowhere, unleashing a brutal attack on both Unji and the frog chefs. The chef wreaks havoc, tearing apart the obstacle course and everything in its path. The chef gaze, then locks onto Momo, who unknowingly is standing atop of a large piece of chocolate. As it takes notice of her, the few remaining frogs freeze in place, clutching pieces of chocolate as though paralyzed by fear. As the chef begins to speak again, echoing the same words as before, "Let's all have something to eat," and asking if they would like to eat some candy, Momo hurries to help Unji, still confused by what's going on. He hands her a large lollipop, telling her not to let go of it. He explains that the chef is playing a deadly version of color tag, where anything not touching the item he names is targeted. Momo comments on the chef attacking the frogs, wondering if they're on the same side, but Unji says he doesn't know. Momo glances at the ground and notices origami frogs scattered around. Unji informs her that these were the frog the chefs attack, revealing that they are in fact shikigami. The chef calls out Florentine as the next dessert, prompting Momo and Unji to scramble to find one. Momo spots a Florentine and manages to land on it, but the brittle dessert cracks under her weight, causing her to fall. Unji rushes in just in time to catch her. Thinking quickly, Momo hoists the Florentine up toward Unji's face, ensuring they both stay safe from the chef's wrath as it devastates the surrounding area even further. After Unji pulls Momo up, the two leap onto a giant donut, the next dessert item the giant chef summons. The shikigami frogs land on the donut as well, immediately attacking Momo and Unji. One of the frogs taunts Momo, warning her that Danmanra won't let them leave, calling both her and Unji monsters, claiming that they will die there. Momo, unsure of what he's referring to, knees the frog in the chin and shouts, "You're the monsters." Unji jumps in to assist, attacking the frogs with his Geta sandals. Grateful for his help, Momo hilariously admits that she was wrong about the sandals being useless. She also points out that there are fewer and fewer places for them to stand now due to the destruction caused by the chef. Unji informs her that the Kintama is on a macaron. As the chef begins calling out for the next dessert item, which disappointingly turns out to be a cake, Momo's frustration grows. She and Unji race toward the Kintama, determined to reach it before the Shikigami frogs do. Unji tells Momo to head for the nearest cake while he secures the Kintama. Just as a frog reaches out to grab the Kintama, Unji steps in, shoving it aside and swiftly securing the ball. But before they can catch their breath, the giant chef roars and launches an attack on everyone. Momo, Unji, and the Shikigami frogs with its massive roller and whisk. As the chaos intensifies, the chef takes a bow, thanks everyone for their kind patronage, and declares that they are closing for the day. In the midst of the madness, a mysterious hand latches onto the chef's roller. It's Momo who, to everyone's surprise, has mysteriously regained her psychic powers. With newfound strength, she positions herself to face the chef, glaring at it in anger. "Are you serious about the cake?" she demands, still fuming from earlier when it had called out cake instead of a macaron. Bracing herself for an attack, she shouts, "Momo, try beam," and unleashes a devastating point-blank blast straight at the chef's face, completely obliterating the giant once and for all. After defeating the giant chef, Unji helps Momo out of the pile of candy, thanking her for saving him. Moments earlier, as the chef nearly lands a devastating blow on Unji, his spiritual power still not fully recharged from his battle with the giant knight, he desperately grabs the golden ball, regaining enough energy to form an umbrella. However, the umbrella's incomplete state leaves him vulnerable. In a last-ditch effort, Unji tosses the golden ball to Momo. Catching the ball mid-air, Momo uses her psychic powers to pull Unji away from the chef's attack just in time. Using her momentum, she latches onto one of the giant chef's tools and maneuvers it against him, landing a decisive blow that leads to his defeat. Afterward, Momo offers to return the Kintama to Unji, honoring his motive to beat the game. Unji, impressed by her strength, allows her to hold on to it, much to Momo's delight. Shortly later, two scrolls materialize before them, announcing they've acquired a new card called Nom Nom Bongo, which explains they can gain powers from the treats they eat. Testing it out, Unji eats a donut and finds his legs transformed into spring-like rows of donuts, while Momo licks a lollipop and becomes sticky. Wondering how they can return to normal, Momo notices the card has pictures of a giant knight and chef they defeated. When she touches the knight's image, a shield materializes. Unji tries the same and gets similar results. Realizing the key to winning the game is defeating all the bosses, Momo and Unji prepare for the challenge. With Momo's power depleted after using her Momo Tri-Beam, Unji suggests they rely on the card and consume various types of candy to regain strength. Momo enthusiastically agrees, while Unji wonders where his Geta sandals are, prompting her to remark that she thinks he's an airhead, to which Unji retorts that the same could be said about her. Unbeknownst to them, the card contains a hidden detail. Consuming items in Danmanra gradually transform the player into a resident of its world. Elsewhere, after Unji's group decides their best chance to defeat the game is by entering together, Okarun objects, warning that it might not be that simple since the diorama is a cursed object, and insists they wait for him to inform Seiko of the situation. Despite this, the group resolves to risk their lives for Unji, while Okarun warns that if they fail as a group, they won't be saving anyone. The gang leader retorts, saying that dragging their feet could make them too late, but he understands Okarun's point. He insists Okarun does what he wants, and the gang will do what they need to do. With that, Okarun shifts into his Turbo Granny form to reach Seiko. Inside the game, Momo and Zuma climb a tower to escape a pursuing monster that resembles Medusa. Despite their weak spiritual powers and the Dark Knight's sword being ineffective against the creature, Unji says that he can see the peak, the top of the tower, but warns that at their rate, they'll be eaten before they get there. He suggests eating marshmallows to cushion their fall if they jump, hoping it will save them from death. However, Momo realizes this won't work after seeing the monster consuming items she threw, noting that it will do the same to them. Determined to defeat it, Momo notices the color of the Medusa-like creatures change, and upon further inspection of her bag, discovers spicy chips they haven't used yet. After eating one, Momo spits out a fireball and hands the bag to Zuma. Both of them simultaneously fire their attacks at the monster, but it has no effect and the creature continues to relentlessly chase them. As Momo and Zuma near the top of the tower, they use the donut's abilities to springboard themselves upward. Momo throws another piece of candy at the Medusa-like monster and confirms her theory. The Death Pâtissier curse also affects enemies, turning the monster's body into candy. Seizing the moment, Momo pulls out the spicy chips again. Together with Unji, they both use their fire breath simultaneously to burn and melt the creature. The combined flames cause the candified beast to weaken, but the monster still tries to flee. In one final move, Momo summons the Dark Knight's sword card, jumps down, and splits the creature in two, just as Unji's fire breath strikes at the same moment, completely obliterating it. Meanwhile, after arriving at the ISA house to seek Seiko's help, Okarun learned from Turbo Granny that Seiko is out working. He updates her, Famola, and Rin, who had arrived earlier to thank Seiko with a gift about Momo being trapped in a board game. He explains that it's the reason he came to ask Seiko for help. Turbo Granny laughs at Momo, saying she got what she deserves, while Okarun asks if she knows anything about the cursed object, a diorama with a castle inside. Turbo Granny scoffs, "What do I get out of it?" Mai fires back with an insult, immediately triggering a fight between them. As they bicker, Famola explains to Okarun that they don't get along. Okarun tries to ask Mai about the cursed object, but she's too caught up arguing with Turbo Granny to respond. Desperate, Okarun pleads with Turbo Granny for help, offering anything in return. "Anything?" she says, and Okarun eagerly agrees. She then starts by asking if there is a black cloth near the diorama. When Okarun says no, she responds, annoyed, and tells Rin she must accompany them to the diorama. The group heads off as Turbo Granny assigned Famola to stay behind and look after the house, believing she would just get in the way, though Okarun disagrees. Inside the diorama, Momo and Unji arrive at a town and encounter a Shikigami frog. Mistaking it for an enemy, they use the ability of their last defeated boss to turn themselves into stone, but find it ineffective due to their slowed movements and deactivate it. Summoning the shields and sword of the Dark Knight, they prepare for a fight, but are surprised when a frog greets them instead of attacking. After the frog repeats itself twice, Momo realizes it was only programmed for this task, unlike the previous frogs they've encountered. She comments that it's similar to how NPCs in video games always repeat the same lines. As they explore the town, Momo follows the delicious smell of food, and the two discover a giant piece of meat being cooked. She eagerly asks the chef frog if they can have some, and a nearby scroll appears, informing them they must pay for it. Fortunately, the currency used is Shikigami frogs they've collected during their journey, so they pay the chef frog as required and finally enjoy a meal that isn't candy. After eating, Momo suggests finding an inn so they can rest. While she points out that the residents aren't hostile, Unji feels it's too risky to let their guard down in enemy territory. Momo insists that their best option is to rest to recover their powers since the final stage may be the most difficult. Reluctantly, Unji agrees but suggests taking turns keeping watch. They find an inn and decide to share a room, as they can't afford two with their remaining Shikigami. However, both feel uncomfortable when they see there's only a single bed, so Unji volunteers to take the first watch outside. After washing her clothes in the frog washer, Momo steps outside and discovers an outdoor bath. Startled by Momo soon after, Unji agrees to swap shifts, and Momo suggests he use the frog washing machine while he cleans up. Sitting outside, she gazes at the window, lost in thought, thinking about Okarun. Meanwhile, Okarun and Rin find themselves being chased by Bega after they were caught wandering the streets in their school uniforms late into the night. As they run, Okarun can't help but think about Momo. Back at the inn, Unji returns to switch with Momo and finds her asleep. He gently carries her to the bed and, just as he's about to leave, hears her mutter in her sleep, saying, "Tell me you love me." Stepping outside, Unji gazes through the window as the moonlight casts a soft glow on his face. After waking up in the bed, Momo checks in on Unji, who is asleep in the hallway. She tries to wake him and sincerely apologizes for taking the room, feeling even guiltier when he asks if she rested well. As they walk through the streets, Momo and Unji use the Kintama to check if their powers are fully restored. Momo tests her psychic hands, now fully formed, and Unji asks if her abilities are a form of spiritual energy. Momo clarifies that they feel more like superpowers. When she hands the Kintama to Unji and asks him the same question, he admits he's unsure if his powers came from a yokai, but refuses to reveal how he got them. He explains that he can leap using the force created when his umbrella is open, though he can't fly. He adds that once an umbrella is opened, its spiritual powers is spent, and if he opens both, he's completely out of power. Suddenly, it begins to rain and Unji uses one of his umbrellas to shield both himself and Momo. Learning about his power's limitations, Momo grows worried for him as they approach the final stage. Zuma assures her it's fine, but Momo becomes flustered by how close they are. She pushes him to the ground when his concern for her reminds her of Okarun's personality in Turbo Granny form and demands he revert to normal. Confused but compliant, Unji undoes his form, realizing too late that he used up one of his umbrellas, which disappears. Momo scolds him for his lack of control over his emotions. Their journey takes them through a quiet forest and into a ruined castle. As the rain ceases, sunlight gently illuminates the area, revealing small spiritual spirits floating through the air, their glow filling the space with a magical beauty. The serene moment contrasts sharply with what lies ahead. A massive fortress looms in the distance, guarded by knights, behemoths, and wyverns. A scroll materializes before them, its title reading Castle Siege, instructing them to defeat the army and destroy the crystals. Momo, visibly frustrated, exclaims, "Yeah, that's not happening." Facing the challenge ahead, Momo doubts they can defeat the massive enemy force, but learns from the scroll that they can conjure an army using 3 magical dice. The yellow die multiplies results by 100, the red by 10, and the blue by 1. Estimating the opposing force to be around 600 knights, Momo and Unji try to match that number. Momo starts with the blue die, using her powers to roll a 6. However, as a result of cheating, the dice roll is nullified and becomes a 0, frustrating Unji. Next, Momo rolls the red die and lands a 1, summoning just 10 troops. Unji takes the yellow die, and both make silly faces for luck, but the roll lands on 2, producing only 200 troops. Momo grows annoyed as Zuma quips that her earlier cheating likely ruined everything. In any case, with an army of 210 troops, Momo and Unji are instructed to assign roles as the scroll reveals 4 types. Knights are strong against archers, archers are strong against mages, mages are strong against warriors, and warriors are strong against knights. Zuma notes that it's similar to rock, paper, scissors. After dividing their forces and assigning roles, Momo as a mage and Unji as a knight, they prepare for battle. Momo rallies the troops, shouting for everyone to give it their all and reminding them that the goal is the crystal and the castle. Unji charges ahead with the warriors leading the front line. As arrows rain down from the opposing army, Momo quickly commands her troops to raise their shields, but notices their mages taking heavy damage, being vulnerable to archers. Spotting knights on the enemy's front lines, Momo orders her warriors to engage, knowing they have the advantage. Visible HP meters display the health of each troop, showing the warriors getting ground. Anticipating a counterattack, Momo predicts the enemy will send in their mages to crush the warriors. She immediately orders her archers to get ready for a counter, as a group of archers behind her prepares to strike back against the weaker mages. As the enemy's mages advance to the front to attack, Momo swiftly orders her archers to take them down before they can strike. She also directs her warriors to reposition, ensuring they are out of the mages' range, where the spells can't reach them. Meanwhile, Unji undergoes his transformation, charging in with a powerful kick that takes down several archers. He then uses his shield and umbrella to protect himself from incoming arrows. Afterward, he tosses both the shield and the umbrella like projectiles, taking out more of the enemy forces. Momo watches the scene unfold, satisfied. Her decision to make Unji the sole knight in the army was clearly the right one, as it allowed her to strategically assign the remaining troops to the other roles. Despite the setback, Momo and the mages press on, charging their attacks against the enemy's warriors. Their efforts pay off as they successfully take down a third of the opposing army with minimal damage to their own forces. However, the tide turns when the enemy deploys behemoths, which annihilate large portions of Momo and Unji's troops. Momo quickly warns Unji to stay clear of the behemoths as they thrash through their forces, with one of them taking Zuma's HP down by half, identified as part of the warrior class. Momo commands her troops to attack while falling back, but Zuma cautions that creating too much distance will leave them vulnerable to the enemy's archers. She orders her warriors to raise their shields to defend against the barrage of arrows, only for them to be wiped out by a wyvern flying overhead, unleashing a torrent of fire. Reacting quickly, Momo orders her archers to target the wyvern, knowing it falls under the mage class, and asks Unji to focus on taking the enemy archers. But with warriors protecting the mages and the beasts continuing their relentless assault, Momo begins to sense the battle slipping out of their control. Okay, can we just acknowledge how overwhelmingly dire the situation for Momo and Unji look right now? This is freaking intimidating. Momo yells for her army to hold their ground as the opposing forces beasts continued their relentless assault. However, she notices on her diagram scroll that 84 of her troops have already been eliminated, including the mages fighting alongside her. As the smoke clears, Momo suddenly faces a charging behemoth about to stomp her. But just in time, a motorcycle crashes into the beast, taking it down and saving her. Turning around, Momo sees the Renjaku high schoolers and Unji's gang charging into battle, shouting and hoping that Zuma is holding up. Despite their lack of formation or strategic pairings, Unji's gang rides motorcycles, hurling arrows at the dragon, while others charge the behemoth, climbing atop it to take it down. With their raw skills, the gang manages to defeat the massive mythical creatures and beasts, culminating in an incredible double-page spread of them taking out the enemy's warriors. Momo is impressed by their sheer ability, while Unji casually remarks they're just used to fighting. Looking at the scroll, Momo realizes that the battle has shifted in their favor. However, Unji reminds her that defeating the army is only one of the conditions to clear the stage. They now need to focus on destroying the crystals inside the castle. When they reach the castle, the two notice a beam of light shining down, illuminating the crystal. Momo observes that talismans are layered over it, and Unji tells her to step back as he prepares to slash it with his sword, determined to finally end this chaotic world they're trapped in. Just then, they hear Okarun's voice shouting at them to stop, but it's too late. Unji strikes the crystal, splitting it in half. As Okarun and Turbo Granny rush toward them, they urgently warn Momo and Unji to run. After the crystal is destroyed, Momo, Okarun, Turbo Granny, and Unji escape the castle as it begins to collapse. Confused, Unji asks why the game hasn't ended, believing he had cleared it. Okarun explains that he wasn't supposed to clear it, and Turbo Granny reveals the truth. Danmanra isn't a board game but a cursed wicker trunk designed to imprison an evil yokai through the power of a seal. Unironically, Zuma remarks on how strange it is that a cat can talk, earning a glare from Turbo Granny. Meanwhile, Okarun asks Momo if the person she's with is Zuma, and she simply responds, yes. Concerned, Momo turns to Turbo Granny and asks if there's anything else they weren't supposed to destroy. Turbo Granny reveals that the 4 seals should have remained intact. Realizing the seals were the 4 bosses printed on the cards, Momo is shocked. Turbo Granny berates her, clarifying that the bosses were actually guardian deities tasked with keeping the yokai locked away. The Danmanra had disguised itself as a game to trick people trapped inside into breaking the seal. While the group momentarily cheers at a congratulatory sign for completing the game, Momo asks Turbo Granny what the yokai was sealing. Turbo Granny admits she doesn't know, but warns that it must be extremely dangerous to require such a powerful curse to contain it. At that moment, the yokai emerges, a mass of writhing black tentacles, each adorned with cards bearing distinct features like a nose, ear, or face, creating an unsettling patchwork of human traits. Its presence exudes an eerie, otherworldly menace, with the cards shifting and twitching as if alive, heightening the oppressive and ominous atmosphere. It thanks the group for freeing it. Turbo Granny warns everyone to close their eyes, explaining that the yokai, known as the fairy tale card, can possess anyone who makes eye contact. The fairy tale card recognizes Turbo Granny's voice and mocks her, asking if she now sides with humans. Turbo Granny insults the yokai and deduces that the fairy tale card turned the trunk into a board game, knowing it couldn't break the seal itself and needed someone else to do it for it. With their eyes closed, Momo demands to leave, but the fairy tale card explains that they can't escape. He reveals that he let the old man player and a girl from Unji's gang leave because they hadn't played the game and could be used to lure more victims by spreading tales of their experience. Momo demands to leave the world, telling the yokai that despite the various candies it tried pleasing them with, she finds the world boring. The fairy tale card questions if Momo's desires to leave applies to the others as well, pointing out the flaws of returning to society. He suggests that they loathe the real world and want to turn it into chaos. After recalling a tragic memory from hearing the fairy tale card's words, one of Unji's gang members opens his eyes and attacks Unji, having become possessed by the yokai. Unji, struck in the head, opens his eyes and sees the fairy tale card in human form. The yokai compliments Unji's lovely eyes, claiming he can sense Unji's desire to destroy the world and leave it in ruins. Under the fairy tale card's control, Unji begins to undergo a terrifying transformation. Everyone watches in shock as Unji begins to transform. Turbo Granny, alarmed, mutters the name Umbrella Boy and questions why someone like him would be here. As Unji opens an umbrella, the force of his monstrous form blasts those in close proximity. Turbo Granny then asks Momo if she can still use her powers, to which Momo explains that she can't without the Kintama, which is currently in Unji's possession. Satisfied with Unji's transformation, the fairy tale card reveals his plan to use Unji's newfound powers to escape the cursed trunk and unleash a rain of blood upon the world. Unji, now transformed, exudes a menacing presence with a skeletal, shark-like mask, a muscular frame, clawed hands, and flowing, tattered fabric. His powerful legs and sandals give him a twisted human-like form, amplifying his apocalyptic aura. Realizing the danger, Momo shouts for everyone to use the Medusa card to turn their bodies to stone, shielding themselves from the vacuum blast unleashed by Umbrella Boy's Unji's umbrella, as the others are seen scattered in panic from the attack. As the group braces for another attack, Momo notices something strange. Umbrella Boy Unji's ability should only allow for 2 uses of his umbrellas. Turbo Granny explains that the fairy tale card has the ability to push any human under his control to their maximum potential, forcing them to use their abilities repeatedly until their bodies break down from overuse, warning that at this rate, Unji will die from exhaustion. Umbrella Boy Unji prepares to launch another devastating attack. Momo, Okarun, and Turbo Granny shield themselves with the Medusa card, but Momo's right arm sustains damage from the blast, causing the stone layer around it to crack. The yokai laughs, delighting in the chaos as inside the possessed form of Unji, his mouth gasps for air, blood leaking from it, a sign of the toll the overuse of his powers taking on him. Images of Momo and Unji at the village flash in Momo's mind. Determined to save him, she shouts at Unji, urging him not to be manipulated. She reminds him that he's not the kind of person who would harm the friends who came to support him. However, the fairy tale card, speaking through Unji, denies her claim, insisting that it isn't manipulating him. It asserts that it is Unji who desires to bring destruction to the world, and that it only wishes for him to be true to himself. Momo prepares to use the Medusa card as Umbrella Boy Unji jumps in, readying another vacuum blast. However, the card slips out of her hand and Okarun uses his card to shield himself. A deep cut opens on Okarun as he takes damage, but he asks Momo if she's okay and urges her to run. Just then, he notices a severe cut through her torso. She couldn't shield herself in time, and she takes the full brunt of the blast, collapsing to the ground, badly injured. Okarun is left in shock. Okarun carries the injured Momo away from the shockwave blast unleashed by Umbrella Boy Unji, frustration mounting as he struggles to protect her. As Umbrella Boy Unji prepares for another attack, Okarun activates his Medusa card, turning himself to stone for protection. However, when he reverts back to his human form, his back is slashed by the blast, leaving him wounded, cursing his inability to attack. As he looks up, the yokai prepares another attack, and Okarun notices that his card to transform into Medusa is too far away. With no other choice, he decides to shield Momo's body, bracing for the next blast. To his surprise, the blast is suddenly blocked by a cashier desk, and Okarun looks up to find Rakuro standing in front of him. Rakuro explains that he followed Okarun, who is being chased by Bega, hoping to find a lead on a new part-time job. Turbo Granny, visibly annoyed, scolds Okarun for not telling her how to undo the effects of the Medusa card. She approaches Momo's injured form, beginning to treat her wounds. Just then, Bega appears, announcing his intention to arrest everyone, despite not being sure if the world they're in is real or just a dream, much to Turbo Granny and Okarun's shock. He joins the fight against Umbrella Boy Unji alongside Rakuro. The fairy tale card remarks that both Rakuro and Bega have no part in this before Umbrella Boy Unji attacks. The group barely manages to evade the yokai's assault. Now angry, Bega fires at the yokai, while Rakuro simultaneously unleashes a particle beam at Umbrella Boy Unji. Bega, still fuming, mentions that Rakuro is under arrest for using a dangerous weapon, all while Okarun is seen running away with the injured Momo. After taking damage from both attacks, Umbrella Boy Unji retreats into the sky, flying at incredible speeds like a rocket, evading all further attacks. Turbo Granny warns Okarun that while Umbrella Boy is a sweet yokai by nature, when forced to fight, he becomes unstoppable. The group watches as the yokai unleashes a flurry of quick, successive attacks. Turbo Granny tells Okarun that they must take the Kintama from Unji to restore his powers, while she tries to contact Rin for assistance. Okarun hesitates, knowing the task will be difficult, especially in his current human form, but Turbo Granny reminds him that only he can stop Unji's rampage. After carrying Momo's unconscious body to the stage platform, Okarun rushes back to the battlefield, where Rokuro and Beiga continued their fight against Umbrella Boy Unji. As he runs, he notices how sluggish he feels without Turbo Granny's power and begins to worry how he'll fight Unji to reclaim his Kintama. Then, an idea sparks in his head. He asks himself what Momo would do in this situation. Beiga tells Rokuro he's out of ammo, and the Serpo knows how troublesome Unji is as long as he's in the air, using shockwaves to manipulate his umbrella with air resistance. The Serpo suggests that if they could take out the air, Unji's movements would stop. Okarun catches up and asks Rokuro to use his nanoskin to turn into a rocket. Rokuro can transform, but lacks enough nanoskin for a rocket, so he constructs a jetpack instead. The jetpack falls mid-flight, disappointing Okarun. Rokuro warns that they can't reach Unji as long as he stays in the air. Beiga compares Unji's control of the wind to being inside a typhoon. After hearing Beiga's comparison, Okarun comes up with an idea and asks Rokuro to build a heater to execute it. Rokuro constructs the heater, powered by Okarun and Beiga's body heat as they run. The heated air quickly rises, creating an updraft that forces Unji into a tornado made by his own gust, exactly as Okarun intended, with Unji struggling to hold onto the umbrella. With Unji now grounded, Beiga kicks the umbrella away as Unji tries to kick him, but Beiga shields the attack with his left arm. The Serpo intervenes and uses his Sixth Sense Organs attack, but Unji's powerful defense absorbs it. Unji retaliates with a fierce left punch, using his Geta sandals for extra force, striking the Serpo. As Unji directs his next attack toward Beiga, Okarun grabs Unji from behind just as Beiga strikes him. However, Unji's umbrella appears out of nowhere and strikes Beiga, then hits Okarun. Unji stands atop the umbrella, pinning Okarun down and releases a powerful shockwave directly onto him. As the dust settles, Umbrella Boy Unji asks who Okarun is and how he possesses such power. Unbelievably, Okarun manages to reclaim his Kintama just in time to activate his Turbo Granny form, dodging the attack at the last moment. Before the battle begins, Okarun tucks his Kintama into a side pocket of his t-shirt as Umbrella Boy Unji rushes in for an attack. Okarun's feet collide sideways with Unji's. As Unji uses his umbrella powers to propel himself into the air to attack, the curiosity of the fairy tale card grows, wondering how Okarun can use his powers. Okarun evades the attack and tells him he won't reveal the secret. While evading a kick, Okarun jumps up just as Unji uses his Geta sandals on his fist, landing a fierce right punch that knocks Okarun back. Unji then strikes a boxer stance, ready to charge with his umbrella behind him. Unji charges in, and the umbrella releases a powerful wave toward Okarun, who barely dodges. He comments, Zuma's really going all out, but the fairy tale card corrects him, saying these are Zuma's destructive impulses. Seizing an opening, Okarun launches Unji into the air with a powerful kick and immediately activates All Out to finish him off. However, Unji swiftly dodges, using his umbrella to evade the attack. Countering, Unji thrusts his umbrella sword toward Okarun's groin, forcing him to block with his feet. Okarun devilishly smiles, saying that it's he who is trapped now, only for Unji to unleash a shockwave that slams Okarun to the ground. Unji then turns his attention to Rokuro, who levitates several rocks into the air. He fires a shockwave blast at the Serpo, but in his focus, he fails to notice Okarun using the floating rocks as footholds. In a flash, Okarun propels himself toward Unji, diving both feet into his head, cracking Umbrella Boy Unji's mask and sending him crashing down. Without hesitation, Okarun activates All Out once more, delivering a devastating dropkick that smashes Unji into the platform, finally bringing him down. As he catches his breath, Okarun reverts to his original form, noticing the falling rain. He spots a young boy standing nearby, holding an umbrella and wearing only one shoe. The child pleads for him to stop bullying his big brother. A vision follows, two boys holding hands, then the older one running out into the rain. As the image fades, Okarun sees the cracked mask of Umbrella Boy Unji reveal a familiar face, Unji himself. Beiga stares in shock, struggling to comprehend what he's seeing. After all, he's been searching for Unji for ages, as another image of two boys holding hands appears again.
After their father's death, a young Unji and his little brother sit in on a settlement meeting between their mother and their father's superiors. The officials reject their mother's claims that they are responsible for her husband's death, insisting instead that it was his own negligence and decision to work overtime that led to his fate. Back at their apartment, their mother desperately pleads with the landlord for an extension on their rent, but her request is coldly denied. With no sympathy for her struggles as a single mother, the landlord orders them to vacate the premises. In the next room, Unji's younger brother curiously asks if it's possible to fly through the sky using an umbrella. Unji hesitates before answering he isn't sure. While out for a walk with his umbrella, Unji's younger brother is mocked by a group of boys for always carrying it and wearing rubber shoes in public. Before the bullying escalates, Unji kicks one of them and steps in to defend him. In response, his younger brother teasingly asks if Unji's jealous of his umbrella. One rainy night, Unji's younger brother plays in the rain as strong winds rip the umbrella from his grasp, sending it flying into the sky. Later, Unji rushes outside, searching for his brother, who hasn't come home. His worst fears come true when he finds his brother's body by the river, 1 foot bare with only a single rubber shoe remaining. Overcome with grief, he mourns with his mother. Holding the lone shoe in his hand, he recalls a memory of his brother happily holding an umbrella. Sometime later, Unji's mother takes him to an amusement park where he enjoys the rides, eats ice cream, and watches fireworks as his mother smiles. But as the day comes to an end, their outing takes a dark turn. Standing by the train tracks, his mother tightens her grip on his hand, intending for them both to step in front of an oncoming train. In a desperate struggle, Unji manages to break free, but his mother does not. She lets go, and Unji's left to watch as she carries out her tragic decision. Shortly after being placed in a foster home, Unji is beaten by 3 other kids for his scowling expression. Instead of backing down, he fights back, grabbing a nearby brick as his frustration boils over, questioning why the world is so cruel to him. As he grows older, Unji becomes a delinquent, leading a gang into a brutal fight with a rival group. After his victory, he declares that they are all under his umbrella, claiming the defeated members as his new underlings. Later, Unji escalates his defiance by attacking and harassing police officers on duty, instigating chaos in an attempt to start a war. His actions ultimately lead to his arrest by Bega. At the station, the police chief briefs Bega on Unji's troubled past and informs him that the young man will be sent to a youth detention center for reform. However, Bega remains skeptical, doubting that Unji will change his ways by the time he is released. Upon completing his sentence, Unji is met by Bega, who takes him to his apartment and bluntly informs him that he will now serve as his guardian. Unji, recognizing Bega as the cop who arrested him, is furious and immediately tries to land a punch. Without hesitation, Bega counters, throwing Unji to the ground. Looking down at him, Bega tells him that he can only hope to harm him in his dreams and to keep working at it. Unji, lost in a dream of his family, is abruptly woken by Bega and joins him for breakfast. When he refuses to properly give thanks before eating, Bega slaps him as punishment. Annoyed, Unji prepares to walk out, but Bega's comment about him giving up too easily stops him in his tracks. Instead of leaving, Unji defiantly kicks the table toward Bega, wasting the food in the process. Furious, Bega reprimands him for his disrespect. Later, Unji repeatedly tries to land a hit on Bega with an umbrella, but the officer effortlessly sees through every attempt. That night, Unji makes another move, sneaking into Bega's room while he sleeps. Just as he's about to bring the umbrella handle down, his eyes catch a family photo beside the sleeping officer. He hesitates, then silently retreats to his own room. The next day, Unji bluntly asks Bega why he took him in when he already had a family. In response, Bega reveals that his wife and daughter were taken out by a random passerby, someone who claimed to get back at this rotten world by taking the lives of those who seemed happy. He admits that for a time, he had considered killing the murderer, then himself, but every time he came close, he saw his daughter's face and couldn't go through with it. He recalls images of his daughter happily saying, "Daddy is a hero because he fights for justice." Reflecting on this, Bega tells Unji that turning his back on the world's cruelty will only allow it to grow worse. He took Unji in, not out of pity, but because he refuses to give up. He tells him to never forget kindness and compassion. Zuma, unmoved, responds that Bega will never understand him, not after everything society has done to him and his family. He explains how adults blamed his mother for his father's death, how he was bullied at school for being poor, and how sadly his mother even tried to end his life. With that, he leaves the apartment and heads to a site where his brother was found dead, his umbrella shielding him from the pouring rain. As he prepares to leave, Unji notices a few kids bullying a boy by tossing around his lunch, which was made by his mother. He chooses to ignore it until a dead frog on the ground triggers memories of his mother, leading up to her suicide. When the kids throw the boy's lunch into the river, Unji watches as the boy jumps in to retrieve it, instantly reminded of how his younger brother died. He then sees Bega diving in to save the boy. As Bega pushes himself to rescue the boy, his daughter's words echo in his mind, how he's a hero who fights for justice. But as he reaches the boy, exhaustion overtakes him and he begins to black out in the water. Worried over the officer's safety, Unji rushes over, only to come face to face with Umbrella Boy, the yokai who once took the form of his younger brother. Offering his umbrella, the yokai grants Unji's power as tears swell in his eyes. In the next moment, Unji is seen traversing with the umbrella, recalling how his younger brother once asked if you could fly through the sky with one. With that memory in his heart, he arrives just in time to pull both Bega and the boy out of the river. Bega takes a moment to catch his breath, then looks up in surprise to see Unji. The two become relieved to see each other alive. The next day, as they walk to a gravesite, Unji refuses to explain how he saved Bega from drowning, dismissing the question by saying he wouldn't waste his breath on a fool who jumps into a river. Bega retorts that a person has only 10 seconds to resurface before it's too late, to which Unji replies that it's pointless if he risks drowning as well. Upon arriving at the Zuma family grave, Unji thanks Bega for building the memorial and the two join in prayer. Unji then explains how his family never had any money and everything his brother Futa had was a hand-me-down from him. He shares how terrible that made his mother feel, so she bought Futa an umbrella and rubber boots. Unji recalls the joy Futa felt when he received the umbrella and rubber boots, a happiness that lifted both his and their mother's spirits. But when Futa died, their mother gave up. Unji cries, feeling like he should have been the one to die instead of his brother. Hearing this, Bega solemnly places a hand on Unji's head and tells him that he must not die. The two then leave the gravesite and share a meal together, praying and giving thanks for the food they are about to eat. In the present, Momo regains consciousness as Unji's memories come to an end. Meanwhile, the fairy tale card condemns Okarun, Bega, and Rikuro as fools for interfering with Unji's freedom to wreak havoc and begins attacking them. The fairy tale card then starts merging with Unji's body, but Bega's voice pulls him back to his senses. The yokai takes to the sky, saying he can't have the police officer get any closer, or he will lose his hold on Unji as he prepares to escape from the cursed trunk. Upon reuniting, Momo blames herself for everything that has happened, but Okarun reassures her that everything will be okay, including Unji's return. While running towards Momo and Okarun with the delinquents behind her, Turbo Granny contacts Rin through the Serpo phone. She instructs Rin to carefully place the cursed trunk on the black cloth where talismans are laid out everywhere, allowing her to handle it safely and extract the figurines without harm. Turbo Granny warns Rin that even the smallest crack could be fatal. Rin confirms she's ready on her end. Rin, however, asks how she's supposed to transfer the cursed trunk to the black cloth since touching it will pull her inside, and the bench it's sitting on is fixed to the ground, making it impossible to move. The girl who was freed earlier from Zuma suggests attempting to move the trunk with sticks. Unfortunately, this plan backfires, sending her back into the inner world, as Turbo Granny's warning comes too late that such an approach would be useless. Realizing Mai's resistance to curses, Turbo Granny directs Rin to have used the black cords to carefully lift the cursed trunk onto the black cloth. However, Mai refuses to help and insists that Rin should be the one to take action. She reminds Rin of her promise, threatening to haunt her until she becomes an idol, which will never end unless Rin fulfills that role. Despite Rin's protests, insisting it's not the right time, Mai begins to fuse with her. The transformation triggers an explosion, and when Rin opens her eyes, she finds herself in an idol outfit, much to her embarrassment. Mai, now transformed into a microphone, tells Rin that she can save everyone through song. She urges the crowd to cheer her on, reminding them that their support will give her the strength to sing. Mai adds that if Rin doesn't sing, she'll be stuck in her revealing idol outfit for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, Turbo Granny, heavily annoyed by Mai, pounds the ground in frustration as Okarun tries to reach out to her. Suddenly, everyone notices the world of Danmanra beginning to collapse. Turbo Granny falls into a panic, realizing that this could be the result of everyone being erased, thinking the seals had been broken. In the midst of the chaos, they suddenly find themselves being lifted into the air. However, Momo isn't being lifted and clings tightly to Okarun's hand. As everyone rises higher and higher, Momo asks Turbo Granny if they are going to disappear. Worried, Turbo Granny admits she doesn't know but notices something strange. Momo then says she can hear a song, and Okarun agrees, confirming it's a singing voice. Turbo Granny quickly realizes that the cause of this phenomenon is the Onbusuman's power over gravity, which Rin is using to levitate the figurines out of the diorama diorama. Meanwhile, the crowd, moved by Rin's beautiful singing, begins to cry. Wanting to support Rin as she uses her gravitational singing to lift the figurines from the cursed trunk, two men join in with their instruments, playing alongside her. Shout out to the DJ using CDJs. I see you, my guy. As Rin sings her heart out, elsewhere within the inner realm, Okarun holds tightly onto Momo's hand as he, Turbo Granny, Rikuro, and Bega continues to ascend. He soon realizes that Momo remains the only one still anchored to the ground. Turbo Granny deduces that Momo's stuck because she consumed food from this world. Momo urges Okarun to go on without her to avoid being trapped, but he refuses and gives her his Kintama, hoping it will free her from the cursed trunk's influence. Unfortunately, it proves ineffective as Turbo Granny explains that the curse originates from the fairy tale card, meaning they must defeat him before the world collapses. Deciding to stay with Momo, Turbo Granny entrusts Okarun with the mission of defeating the fairy tale card, warning him to act quickly since time moves faster in the inner world than in reality. Though Okarun agrees, he struggles to let go of Momo's hand, confessing that being separated from her was unbearable. Overwhelmed, he finally declares his love for her and swears never to be apart from her again. After all this time, ladies and gentlemen, he finally confessed his love for her. Attaboy, Okarun! Blushing, Momo slowly lets go, allowing Okarun to ascend. She tells him to defeat the fairy tale card and wait until she's free from the cursed trunk to properly confess his feelings. Okarun promises her, then rises with Rikuro and Bega. Meanwhile, as the fairy tale card compels Unji to flee, his badly injured body weakens him. Before he can escape, he is surrounded by delinquents determined to stop him and save Unji. The delinquents reappear in the real world, leaving Rin shocked by their sudden arrival and Unji's severe injuries beside her. Meanwhile, the fairy tale card also escapes, celebrating its newfound freedom as Unji's followers rush to his aid. The yokai, expressing gratitude for Unji's efforts, vows that his death will not be in vain. Then, with a sinister grin, he reveals that he has found someone with the power to destroy the world, the unsuspecting Rin, who freezes in response. The fairy tale card tries to take control of Rin by invading her mind, twisting her childhood memories of her mother and grandmother into hatred through the yokai's influence. However, Mai, firmly declaring herself as Rin's producer, forcefully repels him against the wall, refusing to let him manipulate Rin. As Rin blushes, she defiantly announced that she's going to sing, enraging him. In retaliation, the fairy tale card uses his powers over body parts to erase Rin's mouth, silencing her and stopping her song. As a result, Okarun, Rikuro, and Bega's levitation out of Danmanra abruptly halts, sending them plummeting downward. Thinking quickly, Rikuro activates his nanoskin to form jet booster arms, with Okarun and Bega clinging to his legs. However, their combined weight drags him down, preventing further ascent as Rikuro jokingly tells them to let go. Meanwhile, the delinquents charge at the fairy tale card, but their attacks are useless against his body to manipulate body parts. Some lose their sight, others their hearing, leaving them disoriented. One by one, they fall under his mind control and turn against each other. One of the larger delinquents urges the group to stand their ground, telling anyone still conscious to protect Rin. However, he too is soon controlled, ruthlessly plummeting his comrades before lunging at Rin. Just as he's about to reach her, talismans suddenly appear, placed onto the controlled students' heads from the black cloth, paralyzing them. With a swift entrance, Count Saint Germaine is revealed as the one responsible. Recognizing him, the fairy tale card questions why he stands in his way, given that he was already aware of the plan to use Umbrella Boy for his release. Though the yokai acknowledges him, Count Saint Germaine, now channeling black lightning through his sword, coldly demands to know who he really is. The fairy tale card, unfazed by Count Saint Germaine's lack of recognition, remarks that he isn't the kind of person he'd want as a friend. He then uses his powers to erase Count Saint Germaine's eyes, believing this will give him the upper hand. However, despite being unable to see, Count Saint Germaine skillfully deflects the yokai's attacking buds with his sword. He then swiftly shifts to offense, pulling vials from inside his coat. After replacing the vial on his sword, his leg charges up, revealing his ability to jump using the jumping crone vial. With its enhanced jumping and foothold abilities, he propels himself toward the fairy tale card and slashes at its mouth with another vial, Black Hair Cutter. This attack briefly restores Rin's mouth, canceling out the yokai's power and leaving the fairy tale card visibly harmed. However, the effect is short-lived. One of the fairy tale card's buds regenerates the mouth card almost instantly, and Rin loses her mouth once more. The yokai taunts Count Saint Germaine, declaring its regeneration can allow it to grow an endless supply of new buds, making resistance futile. Undeterred, Count Saint Germaine uses the water tiger vial to land safely after being struck by a bud. The fairy tale card continues his assault on Count Saint Germaine, telling him that he cannot defeat him alone. He then questions why Count Saint Germaine would oppose him, revealing that it was he who gave the golden ball to the police officer, who then handed it to Zuma to enter the cursed trunk. Now annoyed, the fairy tale card wonders why Count Saint Germaine has arrived, only to try and kill him. Saint Germaine then points out the fairy tale card's overconfidence, revealing that a convinced victory only makes one careless, and those who are careless expose their failings. The yokai denies this, throwing it back at him, saying that Saint Germaine has come with no preparation to defeat him. Saint Germaine then reminds him that just a moment ago, the fairy tale card claimed that he couldn't beat him on his own. Recalling how Karuta cards are meant to be read and picked up in pairs, Count Saint Germaine theorizes that defeating the fairy tale card is possible if all of his cards are destroyed in pairs or all at once, concluding that the yokai won't be able to regenerate. Acknowledging this, even if this was the case, the fairy tale card tells him that he can't accomplish this alone, and Count Saint Germaine agrees. Suddenly, Okarun, Rokuro, and Bega emerge from the cursed trunk, having just been freed. Count Saint Germaine turns to them, believing they can help him achieve this goal. Furious, the fairy tale card scorns Okarun, Rokuro, and Bega as cowards, calling it disgraceful that he's being ganged up on. As they retreat, Okarun reveals that he can no longer transform into his Turbo Granny form after exhausting All Out twice. Meanwhile, Bega grows anxious about Unji's whereabouts, prompting Rokuro to remark on how useless they are in their current state. Count Saint Germaine suddenly appears behind Okarun, delaying formal introductions and proposing they work together to defeat the fairy tale card. Rokuro immediately recognizes him and questions his presence, to which he responds that he doesn't know him. Okarun, however, is startled as he notices Rin in her dance idol attire without a mouth. Spotting Unji lying unconscious, Bega rushes to his side and desperately tries to revive him. In his subconscious, Unji envisions himself standing beside Futa, smiling only to watch his younger brother holding his umbrella, running toward their parents and bidding him farewell. Accepting this with a smile, Unji turns to leave, just as Bega's frantic shouts pull him back to reality. Stirring awake, Unji silences Bega, assuring him that he refuses to die. Overcome with relief, Bega, tears running down his face, grasps his hand, promising to take him home. Meanwhile, the fairy tale card regenerates the eye card that Rokuro had previously destroyed with his particle beam. Count Saint Germaine tells Okarun and Rokuro that the only way to defeat the yokai is by striking its paired cards simultaneously. He then asks Okarun if he can still fight. Despite wondering how Count Saint Germaine knows about his Turbo Granny powers, Okarun pushes his doubts aside, focusing on saving Momo. Ignoring the strain on his body, he forces himself to summon Turbo Granny's power once more, looking even more monstrous than usual. Count Saint Germaine assigns Okarun to attack the face card and Rokuro to target the eye card, but instructs the latter to wait for his signal. The fairy tale card calls them all villains, but suddenly, Unji aids the situation by summoning one of his umbrellas, surprising the fairy tale card who believed him to be dead. The yokai panics and attempts to regain control of Unji to escape, telling him to think about his mother and how much he should loathe her for trying to harm him. But Unji resists the corruption, declaring that he could never hate his mother for everything she did to protect their family. Frustrated by Unji's defiance, the fairy tale card lashes out, but Count Saint Germaine warns that its motive is to instill human anger and divide them. He tells them all to dismiss its taunts and orders a coordinated strike. With the final, decisive attack from Okarun, Rokuro, Unji, and Count Saint Germaine, all of the yokai's cards are destroyed, displayed in a stunning double-page spread. As the fairy tale card is vanquished, Okarun's unwavering resolve shines through, his only thought being to save Momo. A beam of light shines through with the defeat of the fairy tale card, as those affected by the yokai's powers are freed from its hold. Though exhausted, Okarun urges Rin to use her gravity manipulation to quickly extract Momo from the cursed trunk. As the inner world nears total collapse, Momo clings to Turbo Granny, thanking her for staying by her side. Turbo Granny, in an uncharacteristically sentimental moment, assures Momo that she would never abandon someone dear to Seiko. Ah, she cares! However, when Turbo Granny notices Momo's body beginning to disintegrate, her survival instincts kicks in and she suddenly turns against Momo, wishing the world would take her instead. Frustrated by the sudden betrayal, Momo scolds Turbo Granny, but before they can argue further, they begin to rise into the air. It dawns on them that the fairy tale card has been defeated, and Rin's powers is pulling them to safety. As they ascend, Momo notices Turbo Granny expanding in size, but upon returning to the real world, she is shocked to discover that she has shrunk, now fitting in the palm of Okarun's hand, leaving him and Turbo Granny stunned. Elsewhere, Count Saint Germaine intercepts the fairy tale card, now powerless and attempting to flee. The yokai reminds him of their pact. In exchange for his help escaping the cursed trunk, he would lend him his power. However, Count Saint Germaine coldly states that he will only spare him if he utters the words, "I lose." Relieved by the simple condition, the fairy tale card surrenders, rejoicing in his newfound freedom, only to cry out in pain and rage as Count Saint Germaine stabs him with a small blade, extracting his power. He then reminds the yokai that their agreement was if he did free him from the cursed trunk, his power would be his to take. As he merges the small blade containing the fairy tale card's vital fluid with his own weapon, Count Saint Germaine emerges with the yokai's power. As the fairy tale card demands the return of his abilities, Count Saint Germaine reveals his true intentions to uncover all the world's mysteries, seeking every enchanted object, UFO, and anything tied to the paranormal, including yokai powers. He unveils himself as a collector of the supernatural, with one of his most coveted interests being Dandadan. He then pointedly asks the yokai if he's familiar with it. He said the thing! He said the thing! The next day at the hospital, following the incident at the Renjaku apartment complex, now reported to the authorities, Vega confronts Unji about keeping the cursed trunk and his umbrella powers a secret. Unji explains that if he had spoken up, neither Vega nor the detective would have believed him. He then reveals that the old man he found in their home had been trapped inside the cursed trunk since childhood, and out of pity, Unji allowed him to stay. When Vega expresses frustration in being kept in the dark, Zuma clarifies that he had informed another police officer, Officer Bison, of Unji's whereabouts. Though this is the first time Vega is hearing about it, he acknowledges having seen Unji's name in the lost and found records. Zuma recounts how he retrieved the Kintama after being told it was essential for entering the game, but he cannot remember who gave him this information, though the silhouette of this mysterious figure strongly resembles Count Saint Germaine. Their conversation is interrupted when the old man and his gang visit Unji, though he warns them not to crowd into the hospital room at once to avoid disturbing other patients. Meanwhile, at Goro's stamina booster, Seiko treats the Renjaku high students to a meal but quickly grows irritated, realizing the cost will take up her entire paycheck. Determined to make it worthwhile, she orders everyone to eat their fill. At their table, Ira and Vamola finds Momo, now shrunken, adorable, and eagerly plays with her in a dollhouse, much to Momo's annoyance. Gigi, however, turns serious and questions why Momo didn't call for help. Okarun steps in, explaining that he was in a rush to save her and apologizes for not involving Gigi. Insisting that Momo promised to rely on him instead of depending solely on Okarun, Gigi's words cause both Momo and Okarun to blush as they recall Okarun's confession. Ira and Kinta support Gigi, encouraging Momo to turn to them as well in times of trouble. Gigi then tells Momo that she's precious to him. Seeing how much she means to them, Momo agrees to their request, though Okarun silently takes note of Gigi's words. Mai then remarks that they don't need any more troublemakers, claiming that she and Rin are more than enough. This sparks a conflict with Ira, who is immediately irritated by Mai's attitude. Once the group confirms that Momo has fully recovered, Gigi asks Seiko if there's a way to restore her to normal size. Seiko admits she doesn't have a solution, but expresses deep gratitude to Okarun and Turbo Granny for saving Momo from the cursed trunk and staying by her side. She then reassures Okarun that, no matter what, they will find a way to return Momo to her original form. Later, at the ISA residence, with the second Kintama finally recovered, the group prepares to return it to Okarun's crotch through their usual, albeit bizarre ritual of baseball. Much to his dismay, Okarun protests, questioning why they can't simply place it back normally. Unmoved by his complaints, Turbo Granny takes their mound as the pitcher, brimming with confidence that Seiko, the batter, will miss. However, Seiko reveals she has practiced extensively since their first game, determined to land her hit. Just as she swings, the Kintama takes an unexpected curve, a deliberate trick by Turbo Granny to throw her off. Despite this, Seiko manages to connect, sending the Kintama soaring through the air to everyone's astonishment. Without missing a beat, she calls for the group to search for it. After searching through the grassy field to find them, Okarun finally has both Kintama restored to him. He bows and expresses his gratitude to everyone who helped him along the way. Momo is happy for him, but he then apologizes to her for the ordeal that led to her current shrunken state. She reassures him with a smile, confident they'll find a way to fix it. Meanwhile, Ira is thoroughly delighted, enchanted by Momo's tiny form and already imagining dressing her in various miniature outfits. With her end of the bargain fulfilled, Turbo Granny declares it's time to reclaim her spiritual powers from Okarun. Ira voices concern about Okarun losing his abilities, especially with all the dangers still looming, but Okarun stands by his word. He thanks Turbo Granny for lending him her strength. Okarun sits with his feet submerged in a tub of water, holding onto Turbo Granny, while Seiko stands nearby holding a fan. With her assistance, Seiko whacks Okarun in the head with the fan as Turbo Granny jumps off his hand, seemingly with her powers restored. The room fills with an ominous aura as Ira and Gigi instinctively tense up, fearing she might immediately turn against them. Ira urges Gigi to prepare the evil eye. However, Turbo Granny quickly suppresses her aura, assuring them that she has no reason to stay any longer now that she has reclaimed what was hers. Memories of her time with the gang flash by, showing all the adventures they share together. With that, she bids them farewell and departs from the house. The first saga of Dandadan comes to a close, but the story's far from over. Click here to dive into what happens next.